Okay guys, I'm going to go over the M97 command. It's page 105 in your Haas manual. I suggest you get that page out and be looking at that page as I go over what I'm going to be demonstrating here on the board. Get a piece of paper and some pencils or whatever, because you're going to want to take some notes in order to keep up with what I'm talking about. Also, you have a reference page. I've already uploaded that to Blackboard. You should have that reference page. I'm basically going to go over what I talked about in that reference page right here on the board, show you kind of the program, and that way you have a better idea of what this M97 program is. So starting off, we're going to assume the part is 500 thousandths thick, all right? You're going to have 500 thousandths on the depth of the part. So we're going to cut the contour around the part. So you're going to have a lead in, a lead out, your contour, and all that good stuff, all right? So first thing we're going to do is first thing you always do, which is set up, you plot your points. That'll be the first thing you always do. Plot your points. Go ahead and get those points out there. You know where you're starting, you know where you're stopping, you know where your start point is, your contact point, your contour, and back all the way around. We're going to be using a 0.75 end mill. All right, 750 thousandths diameter end mill, 2 flute. So you got to calculate the speeds and feeds based off aluminum, and with 2 flutes with a chip load of about 5 thousandths. All right. And then what you're going to have to do, once you kind of determine these guys, we're only going to have one tool because we're just cutting the contour. We're going to have to determine our operation orders, and then we're going to set up the structure of the program, okay? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to erase this, and I'm going to get ready, and I'm going to put the structure of the program up here right now for you. All right, so program structure. This is the beginning of how I start just about every program. Now, you know the standard form you have to put up. The percent sign. Your O line. And now your safety line. That's standard every time. Since we only have one tool, we're going to have a startup, a closeout, and a procedure for one tool only. And then that's going to be basically the program. Now, so we're going to have a startup. I'm going to put that SU for tool 1 right here, okay? That startup's going to include your start point, which you've already determined based off of your 750 end mill, okay? Now the last line of that startup is always G01, Z.1, feed of 10, M08. That's always the last line of your startup. So now we're going to jump into the procedure. And here's where things are going to change, because your startup rarely changes except for the few things you change in your startup. The closeout never changes. And then we're going from there. All right? So now we're going to have the procedure. The procedure, which we've already have figured out, is going to be an M97. Okay? Then you'll have a P and an L. The P coincides with the first line of your sub-program, your subroutine. The L coincides with the number of times you're going to loop. And that L is based off of how deep is your cut going to be. 500 thousandths depth of material. You want to make 5 cuts. That means your depth of cut is going to need to be about 105 thousandths deep. That way you end up at 525, slightly past the depth of your material. That way you know you've made a good clean cut all the way around the part. All right, does that make sense? So after your M97, which is going to be your procedure, start up, then you have your closeout. Y'all all know what your standard closeout is. Send the tools home, bring the part to you, everything's done. Now, the only thing we don't have here, the last line of your closeout is an M01. Right? Now what we're going to do is we're going to put the M30 in right here. Now down here, between the M30 and the last percent sign, that's where you put all your subs. You may have more than one sub. You may be subbing out just your loop, your contour program for your loop. You may be subbing out your closeouts. You can sub your closeouts out because they're the same every time. And all you have to do is put another M97P line in there, and there you go. Just don't loop it, you just run it one time, but you put M97P, whatever line your closeout's on, and then that saves you from having to write that entire closeout out every time, okay? Now, so down here, after your M30, this is where your subs are. I'm gonna say sub 1, which could be my contour. And in this case, if I wanted to sub out the closeout, I would put, a break between these two, and then I would put sub number 2, which would be my closeout. Then you put your percent sign in there. Because remember, the program is only going to read everything between the percent signs. But the key is the subs have to come after the M30, but before the last percent sign. All right? Now, that is a quick overview of how you're going to set your program up. Now I'm going to go in and I'm going to erase all this. So I'm giving you time right now to write this down. And you probably want to write it down because this is the important part. The important part you need to know here. The most important thing is your subs. No matter how many subs you have, in this case I'm running 2 subs. Sub to closeout, sub to contour. They have to come after that M30. But they have to be before the percent sign. That's where they have to be located. If you put them anywhere else, it's not going to read it right, and you're going to mess things up. After the M30, before the percent sign. All right? That's the key for doing that. So I'm going to erase this, and now I'm going to go back into more detail, and I'm going to fill all this stuff in. But I'm going to leave out this part up here. I'll probably write startup, and then I'm going to show you how to do the contour, which is going to be your procedure, which is going to be this guy right here. But I'm going to write it down here, okay? Now, so I'm going to do that, and y'all get ready. Y'all should be writing all this down. That way you'll have it, and you won't have to be, you won't have so many questions. So let me erase this, and let's get ready to get into this thing. All right, now, so you start off, you got your tool. So we have our startup. And for tool 1, which that includes your start point, your speeds have already been set, your RPMs for your tools. The last line of the startup is always G01, Z.1, feed of 10, M08. So that's the last line of your startup right here. So here's your startup, and I'm going to underline that in green. There's your startup right there. Your procedure is really short now. Your procedure is going to be one line. That's all it is, one line. M97, P, whatever, the line that starts for your subs, and then L for how many times you want to loop it. Then your closeout. In this case right now, I'm just going to use closeout. I ain't going to worry about subbing the closeout out. I'm just going to run the sub for this, and that way you've got a better idea. And then you can come back in and add your second sub. I'll show you that later on in the program. After this closeout, the last thing you're going to put is an M30. Okay? So now, between this M30 and the final percent sign that I'm going to put down here, this is where your sub has to be written. And here is the key right here. We've already determined that the part is 500 thousandths thick. So we want to end up about 525 in depth. So you got to take the number of loops you want to run. Let's say you're going to run 5 loops. Well, if you go 5 loops at 100 thousandths depth of cut, well, you're going to end up at 500 thousandths deep, but we need to be at 525. So let's make each depth of cut 105 thousandths, okay? So what you need to do right up here, right after your closeout in the very first line here above your M97, is you need to add in there Z0. You want to start at Z0, and here's why you're going to start at Z0, to make sure that your depth of cuts are accurate. Because this line right here, and I'm going to write it in red, this is the first line of my subroutine. And I'm going to name it line N100. That's why I'm writing it in red. N100, right there. Line N100. The very first thing you're going to do is you're going to go to incremental, G91. And you're going to say Z negative 0.105. All right. So now, right here, you're already at Z0. All of a sudden, you get to your procedure, your M97 line, and now you're saying, all right, from where you are at Z0, I want you to drop down 105 thousandths in Z. But now you have to go back to absolute in order to cut the rest of the program. If you leave it here and you don't put the very next line, G90, you're going to incrementally cut your part, and it's going to not work because you've programmed everything in absolute. So you go incremental, take a step down. Immediately, G90. Go right back. Once you make that incremental drop, go back to absolute. G90. Now, you just do your lead in. I'm sorry, not your lead in, your comp on first. I'm sorry, my bad. Do your comp on. Your lead in. Your contour. Your lead out. And your comp off. So there's your sub right there. The last line of every sub you ever write, the last line is going to be an M99. Because that M99, in essence, says, hey, once you're down here, in this case, we're looping it. Once you're done with the last loop, hey, go up to the very next line and complete the program. That's, in essence, what that M99 is saying. But we're not done yet. Because remember, the program only reads between the percent signs, right? So we've got one here with all our stuff, our O line, our safety line, right? Now, the next percent sign goes right here. Because it's going to read all this in between. Now, you still have to fill in these lines right here, right? So the actual main body of the program is right here. There's your program. It's only, your startup lines, this one procedure line, and then your closeout line. So really, what, 15 lines? But now you have your contour down here. And actually, instead of this being below this N100 line, that should be written on the N100 line. G91, Z negative 0.105. Because that's the first line of your sub right here. So that's what goes into this P line, 100. We're going down 105 thousandths incrementally each time we loop it. We have a 500 thousandths part. We need to loop it 5 times. And I went slightly over 100 thousandths on each cut because I want to make sure that I'm past the depth of the actual part, okay? So the L gets a 5. And that's basically how you write the program. It's real easy, it's real simple. Your startup, your last line is the Z.1 feet of 10 M08. Right after that line, you put Z0 because you're incrementally moving down 105 thousandths. If you were 100 thousandths above the part, you would only be cutting 5 thousandths of the part. So you have to go to Z0 in order to get a true 105 thousandths depth of cut off of that first cut. And your next depth of cuts will be at the depth you think they're going to be at. 210, 315, 420, 525. All right? Once you switch over to absolute, incremental, to make that depth, immediately go back to absolute because you've programmed all your points for the contour in absolute. G90. Now, you're already at your start point because you're up here at your start point and your startup. So now you go to your comp on, your lead in, the actual contour of the part, which are the points you've plotted, the lead out, and the comp off. The very last thing you put on there is the M99 on its own line below everything else. That M99, like I said, says, hey, once you're done with your 5th loop in this particular case, go back up and run the very next line of code, which is going to be the first line of your closeout. Now, if we didn't have a loop in there, say it was like that, then you just wouldn't have an L value. You just wouldn't loop it. It would just run whatever you had in there, okay? So that's how you write a subroutine within a program in order so you don't have to keep writing this contour over and over and over and making that program really, really long. Now you can write it down here, write it one time and just say, hey, I want you to run it 5 times and you're automatically going to drop down 105 thousandths each time because that's what you forgot in the subprogram. All right? Now, if you wanted to add the closeout in there too, and I'll write this in a different color for you. I'll tell you, I'll write it in red because it looks like red shows up fairly decent on the screen there. You would have this sub right here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue it over here because I don't have enough room. So what I would do is I would take the percent sign out. Now, I'm going to say that this is still below the N30, but before the percent sign, I'm just, instead of extending it down because I don't have enough room, I'm just going to write it right over here. So now what I would do is I would start another one. This would be in, I'm just going to make up a line in 200. Okay? Now, in 200 will be the first line of my closeout. If you wanted to sub the closeouts also. That way you don't have to keep writing the closeouts over and over and over. All you would write here instead of this closeout would be M97 P, in this case, 200. If you want to. So your closeout would be the traditional closeout, and the first line of your closeout would be right here. Right? Okay, your GOO 4.0, Z 4.0, M05. That would be the first thing you write. So I'll tell you what, I'll go ahead and write that right here. So your first line would be G00, Z 4.0, M05. Shut off the spindle. Then your next line would be G28, Y0, M09. And then the last would be M01. Now, if that program was down here after this program, you'd have a line, an extra line, and then you would start it, and it would be line 200. Okay? So now your percent line sign could go down here after that. And you can put as many subs in there as you want. You just have to make sure that whatever M97 line you're going with, the P number coincides with the sub that you want. And what I normally do is, like, I would write this out and then I would say, you know, in parentheses, close out. And I would write this one right here and I put parentheses right over here, contour. And that way, because it doesn't read what's in between the parentheses. And that way you can kind of keep track of what your subs are. And that way you don't have to keep writing them over and over and over. Because it's a lot easier to write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 digits right here than it is to write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. Do you want to write 7 digits over and over, or do you want to write 23 of them over and over? So it makes it quicker. So when you're taking these tests, you have more time to go to the simulators, check your program, and make sure your program's right. You know, because that's a lot shorter in writing M97 P200 than it is to write G00Z 4.0 M05 G28 Y0. M09 M01. Just trying to make it shorter for you so you'll have the ability to get out of the classroom, get to the simulator. Maybe if you get one more trip to the simulator, that might be the one trip that gets rid of that code, the alarm, and that way you'll make a better grade. All right, so a quick recap. The M97 is the subroutines on page 105, so you already have your book opened up to it. Read that reference sheet that I've put on Blackboard for you. Check out this video. I know it ain't the best. I'm trying to work with what I got. You got to work with me a little bit on here. I'll do the best I can. Hopefully this will give you the information that you need. Just remember the key important facts. Write your sub after the N30, but before the final percent sign. You can have as many subs as you want. You just have to make sure that the subroutine, the line coincides with the P number, with the P line. Whatever P line you have, you've got to make sure that it coincides with that. When you're writing depth cuts on contours, the very first line of your subroutine is an incremental move down in Z. And you have to be at Z0 before you make that move. Because if you're not, then you're not going to have your true depth of where you think you're going to be. So you have to be at Z0. The first line of a contour sub is a G91 move with a negative Z move. The depth of that Z move is what's going to help you determine how many times you loop in order to get the total depth you want out of your loops around that contour to cut the part out of that you need to be, the depth you need to be at to cut the part. All right? Once you make your incremental move, immediately jump back to absolute because you've written the program in absolute coordinates from a datum. So you got to go back to absolute. Now you've got all your absolute coordinates right here. It says, hey, M99, jump back into the program. Oh, and that's what I forgot to put down here. See, if I'd have been in class, you guys would have told me to do this. Hopefully. M99. All right. The M99 says, once you're done running this, so it runs it 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times. On the 5th time, it's going to go, okay, this is my final loop, M99. Go back up and run the next line of my program. If it's your closeout, it's just going to go ahead and run this. If it's the M97, it's going to read the M97. It's going to go, hey, I want you to jump down to line 200 and run what I have on line 200. And it's going to go, boom. It's going to run that, all the way to the next M99, which is going to be right here. It'll come back up, It'll read that N30 and reset. All right. So really, the subroutine is good because it shortens the program up. If you were writing this whole thing in absolute, then you would have to write this part 5 times. And think how long that program would be. Now, you write it here, you write your contour once, and you loop your depth of cuts. So it makes the program a whole lot shorter. That way you can get through all the junk. You're not spending so much time at the computer. You've got more time to write a shorter program and get out to the simulators and check your program, and more time to write the program and get out there and make the part, because your program is shorter. All right, so there's a lot of advantages to writing subroutines. When I was here at school, I subbed everything I could sub when I was having to write programs, because it made it so much shorter and so much quicker. And you're going to find that when you get to this second year, time is what you need. Time on the machines, not time in the classroom. Get out of that computer room. Don't get used to sitting in that computer room and writing your programs. That's the biggest mistake you're ever going to make, because you're going to run out of time on the machines. When you're in that shop, get on those machines. Get off those computers. All this writing these programs, you need to write that stuff at home, so that when you come in, you've either done it at home in Notepad, you can immediately put it in the Simco, check it real quick, put it on the machine. Don't sit in the computer lab and write your programs in the computer lab. That's the biggest waste of time you're ever going to do. When you're in that shop, if you're not having a lecture from one of the instructors, you need to be out there making chips, period. Don't sit in that computer lab and sit there and doodle on that, on the computers writing programs. Write them at the house, bring them in, check them, and then get out on the machines. All right? So this is how you write your sub. I hope this helps you out. Bear with me. I know it ain't perfect. I'm trying to figure out really good spots that I can actually write from that have enough lighting so you can see everything. But run through this, listen to what I say. Hopefully you've taken notes, and hopefully this will answer some of your questions. If you don't have, if you do have questions, you can either email me, or if you need to, you can shoot me a text or call me at 910-264-2674. That's my cell phone. I've got it with me here. If I don't answer it immediately, it's because I'm out busy doing something, but I'll get back to you as soon as I can. But hopefully, between the reference page, the Haas manual, and this will answer most of your questions. Now, don't come asking me questions that are answered in the Haas manual. You need to read that manual, because a lot of you don't get your manuals out when you're trying to write these things. Get the manuals out. That's what it's there for. Because now it's up to you to figure it out. So don't be asking me questions that are in the Haas manual when all you have to do is actually open up the Haas manual and read it. That's what you need to do. That's what I'm expecting you to do before you start sending me text about questions that are easily answered in the Haas manual. All right? All right. Get up with me if you need me. Here's my stuff. Be safe out there, and hopefully we'll see you in the summer.